The sky over Earth had never looked so quiet, but behind that calm blue ceiling, something terrible waited. Giant silver ships floated in orbit, silent and cold, watching the planet like a predator watches a wounded animal. The Galactic Council, an ancient and powerful union of alien civilizations, had arrived not to greet but to control. Their message came through every screen and satellite at once, translated into every language. Calm but firm, Earth was to join the Council as a subject world or face destruction. They called it peaceful integration, but no one was fooled. The Council had done this to dozens of worlds before, always the same way, an offer followed by overwhelming force. Earth's leaders gathered in Geneva, eyes hard, hearts heavier than stone. For once, the old borders didn't matter. No countries, no politics. It was survival now. The aliens believed humans were divided and weak, but they didn't know how unity felt when fear turned into fury. In secret, Earth had been preparing. Years ago, the remains of a crashed alien drone had been found in the deserts of Australia. It was covered up, hidden from the world, and studied in silence. From it, scientists built what they called the Defense Corps, a global network of energy weapons, data jamming systems, and underground bases that didn't exist on any map. Now, the Council's arrogance had triggered something they weren't expecting, a world ready to fight back. As the aliens waited for Earth's response, the United Nations sent a video reply. No speeches, no threats, just the image of a countdown timer. When it hit 0, every alien satellite in orbit blinked out in a flash. Earth's electromagnetic pulse systems had fired in unison, frying their sensors, blinding their ships. Panic spread among the Council commanders above, their screens going dark one by one. On the ground, people watched in silence, breathless. That's when it happened. A shape emerged from the South Pole, a massive black vessel with no markings, rising like a ghost from the frozen Earth. It was the Spearhead, Earth's secret weapon, built in total silence beneath the ice, powered by fusion and armed with weapons even Earth's own armies didn't fully understand. It launched upward with a roar, cutting through the clouds, heading straight for the alien fleet. The Council had made a terrible mistake. They thought they were taming animals. But Earth had teeth, and now, the galaxy was about to feel the bite. The Spearhead rose through Earth's atmosphere like a silent shadow cutting through a storm, its black alloy hull reflecting nothing, shaped not for beauty, but for pure function. Inside, the crew moved with precision, their faces tense, their movements sharp. Captain Aria Grant stood in the center of the command deck, her eyes fixed on the screen ahead, where the first Council warship was just coming into view. It was enormous, larger than any Earth-built machine ever launched into space, but size alone no longer intimidated humans. They had seen Earth torn apart by its own wars, had rebuilt cities from ash, and had watched nature take back land scarred by fire. Compared to the destruction they had survived, alien ships were just another obstacle. The Spearhead didn't carry flashy energy weapons or grand fleets of drones. It carried a weapon humans had learned from their own past: kinetic bombardment. A single rod of tungsten, dropped from orbit at the right speed, could hit harder than a nuclear bomb, and it didn't break any galactic war treaties either. It was the perfect message: simple, brutal, and unstoppable. As the Spearhead closed the distance, its stealth systems held, cloaking it from the Council's sensors, which were still struggling after the EMP wave Earth had launched only hours before. The alien fleet, now partially blind and scrambling to restore order, had formed a defensive grid above Earth, confident in their size and strength. But confidence was not the same as preparation, and the humans were about to prove it. Captain Grant gave the order. In the ship's lower bay, one of the rods 3 meters long, and as dense as a dying star, was loaded into the rail system. No warhead. No guidance. Just speed and gravity. The moment it launched, it vanished from sight, traveling silently through the dark, invisible until the final second. The target was a Council dreadnought, hovering near the moon, coordinating orbital scans and ship formations. On board, alien officers were mid-conference when the hull cracked open from the top like a crushed can. There was no explosion, just a sudden collapse, followed by an expanding cloud of debris that shimmered against the stars. One ship down. Dozens more watched in horror. The shot had come from nowhere, without warning, and hit with devastating precision. Panic spread through the fleet like a virus. Orders clashed. Ships shifted positions, unsure whether to flee or fire. They still couldn't see the attacker. That was part of the plan. Humans weren't trying to fight the Council head-on. They were showing them fear, something the Council hadn't felt in centuries. In the chaos, the spearhead dipped closer to the edge of the alien formation, sliding under their blind spots, its fusion engines pulsing quietly. Inside the ship, tension hung in the air like static. The crew said little. They didn't need speeches. Every person on board knew the stakes. Earth had only one chance to strike before the Council's reinforcements came. If they failed, humanity would be crushed under the boot of a civilization that saw them as little more than defiant livestock. Captain Grant opened a secure line to Geneva. The Prime Minister of Earth's unified government appeared on the screen, his face pale but calm. "Proceed," he said. "No speeches. No ceremony. Just one word, and it was enough." The spearhead released 2 more rods in quick succession, targeting another dreadnought and a command frigate trying to retreat behind the moon. Both strikes hit within seconds of each other, tearing through alien hulls like paper. No one on Earth had ever seen anything move so fast. The orbital cameras, now mostly restored, caught flashes of the explosions, lighting up the night sky like falling stars. On the ground, people watched from rooftops, in silence, their breath caught between fear and awe. For once, the human race stood united, not in surrender, but in shared defiance. The Council ships began to scatter. Some moved to high orbit, trying to get out of range. Others activated countermeasures too late. One cruiser turned its weapons toward Earth, preparing a retaliatory strike, but before it could lock on, a high-altitude railgun from the Andes Mountains roared to life, firing a molten slug that hit the ship dead center, breaking its spine and sending it spinning into the ocean below. From the Council's command station, located on a rotating fortress platform just outside Earth's gravitational pull, the alien admiral watched in silence. His long fingers gripped the edge of the display table, eyes wide with something he had never allowed himself to feel before: doubt. How had a backwater world, not even a full Council member, managed to do this? How had they struck so fast, so hard? It wasn't just luck. This was planning. This was strategy. And worst of all, this was fury. Human fury. He turned to his second-in-command and gave a hushed order to begin full withdrawal. They needed to regroup, rearm, and report. But as they turned their ships to retreat, a series of shockwaves rippled through the fleet. Earth's defense net had come online. Massive railguns, hidden in the deep mountains and deserts, launched barrage after barrage toward the fleeing ships. One cruiser tried to use a civilian satellite as cover only to be split in half by a tungsten slug. Another tried to cloak itself, but its heat signature betrayed it. One by one, the Council ships broke formation, some scattering, some crashing, and some going silent altogether. Back aboard the spearhead, Captain Grant watched it all with a quiet expression. She didn't celebrate. She didn't smile. She knew this was only the beginning. The Council wasn't beaten, just shaken. They would return, and next time they would come in greater numbers, with stronger weapons. But now, Earth had done the impossible. It had drawn blood from a god. For too long, humanity had looked up at the stars and wondered if they were alone. Now they knew they weren't, and they had proven they didn't need to beg for a seat at the table. They would take it. And if the Council tried to stop them, Earth would remind the galaxy that survival wasn't something granted, it was earned in fire and steel. As the stars slowly rotated around the edge of Earth's horizon, the spearhead turned silently, disappearing back into the shadow of the planet, leaving only wreckage and fear behind. And somewhere, in the silence between galaxies, the rest of the universe began to listen. The Galactic Council had existed for thousands of years, built by species older than Earth's continents and powered by technology so advanced it blurred the line between science and magic. In all that time, they had never lost a real battle, not to primitives, not to rebels, and certainly not to a young species barely out of its own orbit. So when Earth destroyed 3 of their capital ships, crippled their fleet, and left a dozen more retreating in flames, the Council did not accept it as defeat. Instead, they called it an insult, a humiliation that had to be corrected. But in their pride and arrogance, they made a terrible mistake. They assumed that the humans had gotten lucky, that Earth's strike was a one-time event, clever but limited. They believed humans had no more weapons left, no more tricks. So they made a plan not for full invasion, but for a demonstration, a correction. The Council called it a disciplinary fleet, a group of high-speed warships carrying elite soldiers designed not to destroy Earth, but to land and capture its leaders, break their defenses, and prove to the galaxy that no species, no matter how brave, could resist the Council's will for long. But they didn't understand what kind of enemy they were facing. They thought humans would panic and beg once their skies were full of alien weapons again. Instead, they found a world already burning with purpose, where fear had turned into fury, and where every citizen, soldier or not, was ready to resist. As the new fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system, Earth scanners tracked them from the moment they passed Neptune. This time, the humans didn't wait for the enemy to knock. They launched a digital strike first, using a virus called Black Echo, created in underground labs in Berlin. It had no body, no weapon, only code. But it slipped through the Council's systems like smoke, bouncing between ships, opening doors, closing others, shutting off lights, flooding screens with strange symbols until finally, one of the ships began firing on another, confused by fake signals. The Council fleet had to stop and reset everything, losing hours, and more importantly, losing trust in their own machines. On Earth, people worked without sleep. Engineers wired new defenses. Hackers launched more waves of digital chaos. Cities practiced blackout drills, while old Cold War bunkers were opened and filled with supplies. The Council finally arrived near Earth's orbit again, landing scout ships in remote areas, deserts, jungles, mountain ranges, thinking to surprise a planet they still saw as disorganized. But Earth had changed. Resistance cells in every country were already in place. Civilians became scouts. Hunters became snipers. Farmers used their fields to hide missile batteries. Even children carried signal jammers in their school bags. When Council soldiers landed, they found not helpless civilians, but a hidden army that struck from shadows and vanished into forests. The aliens had trained for open battles, clean wars, where armies met on smooth fields. But Earth gave them confusion and chaos. In the Amazon, a single platoon was wiped out by traps built from tree sap, fire, and steel wire. In Alaska, Council walkers were led into frozen lakes, their legs cracking through the ice. In New Delhi, a human team hacked a Council transport ship and crashed it into a river, where the locals pulled survivors out only to take their weapons and disappear again. The aliens had numbers, power, and speed, but the humans had the planet itself, and it fought beside them. In orbit, the Council's command ship tried to understand what was happening. Reports were contradictory. Some squads claimed they had been ambushed by machines that spoke in riddles, Earth's drones reprogrammed to speak in distorted alien languages. Others reported hearing music through their comms, strange songs that distracted them before attacks. That was psychological warfare, Earth's new specialty. Every tactic was designed to confuse, frighten, and isolate. And still, the aliens pushed forward, determined to find and capture Earth's leaders. What they didn't know was that the leaders were never in one place. Earth's government had become mobile, moving from hidden base to base, protected by underground rail systems and shielded from scans. Captain Area Grant, now promoted to High Commander, had taken charge of all planetary defense. From a bunker deep under the Ural Mountains, she led a strike force made of the best minds and fighters Earth had to offer. She didn't believe in waiting for help. She believed in pushing first, hitting hardest, and never showing weakness. That's when Earth made its boldest move yet. A team of 6 humans, trained in alien language and cybernetics, was launched aboard a modified asteroid probe. Their mission: infiltrate the Council's command ship. The probe drifted silently, pretending to be harmless space debris. The Council ignored it. That was their mistake. Once it docked, the humans hacked the door, entered through the emergency shaft, and moved fast. They didn't try to take over the ship, they planted a message bomb. When it triggered, every screen aboard lit up with a single sentence in perfect galactic standard: "We are not your prey. We are your reflection and your reckoning." The Council ship's data core fried itself to avoid contamination, and the entire command network collapsed. Fleet coordination vanished. Orders stopped. Ships hovered in place, unable to agree who was in charge. Earth struck again, this time with low-orbit launchers hitting 2 cruisers while their shields were down. The Council soldiers still on Earth received no rescue, no backup, and no orders. One by one, they vanished into Earth's forests, deserts, and oceans, some captured, some dead, some simply lost. Back in the Council's capital, light years away, the message bomb's transmission reached the highest chamber. Silence fell over the ancient counselors, their faces drawn and pale. One of them finally spoke, her voice heavy with disbelief. "This is not a rebellion," she said. "This is a reckoning." And she was right. What they had dismissed as a savage world had turned into a mirror, one that reflected all their cruelty, all their mistakes, and showed them something worse, a species that had survived its own extinction and come out smarter, harder, and absolutely unafraid. They had poked a sleeping bear, and now it was awake, and it remembered everything. The Council's greatest mistake wasn't underestimating Earth's technology. It was underestimating Earth's heart. A heart that beat faster when cornered. A heart that refused to stop even when surrounded. And now, that heart had teeth, and it had just started to bite. The ashes of war had not even cooled when Earth began its transformation. What was once a single planet under siege became the nerve center of something greater, something new. The world that had been underestimated, threatened, and nearly conquered had now stood tall before the galaxy, and instead of falling, it had risen higher than any species ever expected. Humanity had survived the test, and in doing so, it unlocked a new version of itself, not just stronger in weapons, but wiser in vision. From every shattered battlefield, from every underground lab, and every city that had watched the stars in fear, a single idea was born: Earth would never be hunted again. It would become a power so vast, so unpredictable, that no one in the galaxy would ever dare look down on it again. Captain Area Grant, now General Grant, stood before a chamber deep within the Andes, a control room that pulsed with alien and human technology fused together. Screens flickered with the readings of reverse-engineered Council tech, energy flows, and ship blueprints that no one on Earth could have imagined just months earlier. Humans had learned fast how to break enemy code, how to bend alien engines to their will, how to turn fear into knowledge. Across the world, shipyards rose where once there had been ruins. Cities rebuilt themselves, not for peace, but for reach. Earth wasn't hiding anymore. It was preparing to step forward. The first fleet was called Project Skyhammer, and it wasn't made for defense. It was made for travel, for dominance, for presence. While the Council sat in confusion, trying to explain their failure to member species and contain whispers of rebellion, humanity was already moving beyond the solar system. Not to flee, but to search. To expand. To warn. In orbit, the spearhead was no longer alone. It had been upgraded, armored with Council alloy, powered by hybrid fusion dark matter reactors, and flanked by 2 newly built ships, the Dawnbreaker and the Ghostlance, each one built with lessons learned from battle, each one faster, deadlier, and cloaked in a silence that made even the void seem loud. Earth now had a fleet, and more were coming. But the greatest weapon Earth now carried wasn't built from metal, it was information. The captured data cores from fallen Council ships had been cracked open by Earth's best minds. Hidden inside were blueprints, secret maps, communications, and proof that the Council had not only tried to dominate Earth, but had done the same to dozens of other worlds, some still fighting, others long turned to dust. Humanity had found not just enemies, but potential allies. The Council had ruled through fear, dividing species with lies and limiting their growth. But Earth had no interest in playing by those old rules. General Grant sent a message across the stars using a network the Council thought was secure. It was short and sharp, and translated into every known language. You are not alone. Earth remembers. Earth rises. Join us. That message spread like fire through dry leaves. On distant moons, rebel colonies once thought lost raised their flags again. On council-monitored planets, slaves whispered the name Earth like a prayer. Even on planets where humans had never been seen, the signal was received and felt like a spark deep in the bones. The Council tried to block it, but their own systems betrayed them. Earth's digital seeds, hidden in old satellite debris and relayed through hacked beacons, had already burrowed deep. The galaxy had been told that Earth was primitive, chaotic, unfit for diplomacy. But now, the galaxy saw something different, a species that didn't wait for permission to survive, one that had earned its place through blood and brilliance. And Earth was not waiting anymore. The first expedition ships moved past Mars and Jupiter, not to colonize, but to build Gates' massive orbital structures designed to launch vessels across deep space corridors faster than any ship had traveled before. These corridors had once been the Council's exclusive paths, known only to top-level navigators. Now, they were Earth's roads to the stars. As the Spearhead led the charge into a nearby system known only by a Council number Sector Varn 9, they discovered a mining world full of slave labor, species trapped in chains under Council control. The humans didn't hesitate. They didn't broadcast threats. They simply attacked. A precise strike on the control towers, a disabling pulse through the planet's shield grid, and boots on the ground in less than an hour. But this time, they weren't just fighting to destroy. They were fighting to free. When the prisoners looked up and saw the Earth flag, a simple symbol of blue, white, and green, they didn't know what it meant, but they knew what it brought: freedom. Within days, the Council's presence vanished from Varn 9, and in its place stood Earth's banner with the word Union beneath it. Back on Earth, the world had changed. Nations still existed, but not in the old way. The Earth Union Council had been formed, a leadership made of generals, scientists, philosophers, and engineers, all equal, all sworn to protect Earth and any allies under its wing. There were still arguments, still differences, but now they worked as one. For the first time in history, humanity had stopped fighting itself and turned outward with purpose. In the shadows of this new era, the Council scrambled to understand what had gone wrong. Secret meetings were held. Proposals of containment were raised, some even voted to destroy Earth outright, but no action was taken. Too risky. Too costly. Too late. Earth's fleet now patrolled the old Council borders, and rumors spread of a second human base being built on a captured moon, where unknown technology was being tested. The Council had long believed itself unshakable. But now it watched as its authority crumbled not in flames, but in fear. They had tried to teach Earth a lesson, but Earth had written its own chapter instead. And now, one thing was clear: the age of silence was over. Humanity had not just survived the darkness, it had become the torch in the night, and across a galaxy of broken promises and forgotten planets, others began to follow its light. The stars no longer whispered fear when they spoke of Earth, they roared with awe. In the shadows of collapsing systems and abandoned Council stations, the name of humanity spread like a storm that couldn't be stopped. The Galactic Council, once the highest seat of law and power in the galaxy, now stood trembling, its proud members locked behind cold marble walls, surrounded by growing silence. Planets were going dark, allies were vanishing, and the very systems they had ruled for centuries were beginning to question everything. Council worlds, once loyal, were now erupting in protest. Some member species demanded accountability for the failed invasion of Earth. Others accused the leadership of hiding information, of starting a war they couldn't finish. But worse than the anger was the doubt that the Council was still strong enough to lead. For the first time in living memory, the ancient hall where the high voices met echoed with hesitation, as if the walls themselves sensed that their time was ending. They called emergency meetings, drafted plans to rebuild their image, and even considered opening peace talks, but they were too late. Humanity had already arrived at their doorstep, not with guns drawn, but with evidence, with truth, and with allies. Species once enslaved under Council rule now stood proudly beside human envoys, holding up broken chains as proof of freedom. Messages sent from the Earth Union were broadcast through Council space, showing not destruction, but unity. Planets once lost to fear now rebuilding under Earth's protection. The humans hadn't come to destroy the Council. They had come to replace it. Quietly, piece by piece, Earth was building a new alliance, a new order where no world would be ruled by fear again. And yet, even as the Council felt its grip slipping, it could not accept defeat. Pride is a dangerous thing, and in the heart of the Council's oldest members, pride burned hotter than reason. In secret, they gathered on a hidden moon known only to the innermost circle. Here, the last true loyalists planned one final blow, an operation not to defeat Earth, but to break its symbol. Their target wasn't the ships or the soldiers, but General Area Grant herself, now the face of Earth's rise. They believed that if she fell, Earth's courage would fall with her. Using a cloaked vessel designed for assassination, they launched their mission in silence. The ship slipped past patrols, bypassed early warning systems, and reached Earth orbit within days. But Earth had changed. This was no longer a planet that feared shadows. Every signal, every orbiting object was tracked, and the assassin ship was detected before it even began descent. A trap was set not to destroy, but to capture. The Council's final strike team walked straight into it, caught in a mountain range near the Himalayas, surrounded by invisible drones and troops that had been waiting. General Grant arrived in person, not with fury, but with a calm silence that struck harder than any threat. She looked into the eyes of the captured assassins and said only one sentence: "You tried to break a voice, but the world is listening now." Those words were broadcast across the galaxy within minutes. That was the final crack. Inside the Council, panic exploded. Resignations followed. Whole species declared neutrality. And then came the unthinkable: 3 major Council races formally defected and joined Earth's growing alliance. The balance was broken. The Council chambers, once filled with endless voices, now echoed with emptiness and shame. In a last attempt to save their legacy, the Council offered to hold talks with Earth. But Earth didn't arrive as a guest. It arrived as a leader. General Grant, along with representatives from 15 newly freed worlds, walked into the Great Chamber not to kneel, but to announce the formation of the Stellar Accord, a new united body of free species with equal voice and shared vision. They didn't ask the Council for permission. They simply declared it. The Council had no choice but to accept. The once feared rulers were now reduced to observers, watching as history moved on without them. Some tried to resist, but the tide had turned. The galaxy had changed. No longer ruled by fear, it now moved under a new light. That light came from Earth, not because it was the strongest, but because it had dared to rise when others expected it to fall. It had taken every wound, every insult, and turned them into weapons of resolve. Back on Earth, celebrations echoed across cities that had once known only tension. The people didn't cheer for victory alone, they cheered because they had earned respect across the stars. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. It had awoken it. From the icy moons of forgotten systems to the burned-out cores of mining planets, stories of Earth's stand passed from voice to voice, becoming legend. But Arya Grant knew this was not the end. In a quiet room beneath the Andes Command Center, she stood before a display of new systems uncharted, unexplored. "We're not done," she whispered to her staff. "The galaxy is wide, and we have much to protect." And with that, the Earth Union's next fleet prepared for launch, not with flags of war, but with the promise of something better. A promise born not from conquest, but from survival. The shattered Council faded into history, and rising from its ruins was something greater, a united galaxy, led by the ones no one had believed in. The humans had not just earned their place in the stars. They had made it.